Today you become an embalmer in ancient Egypt, more than 3,000 years ago. With these two hands I drew out a pharaoh's organs one by one and soaked them in natron. Also, he could live forever in the next world. Yet no one would ever perform the same rite for a man like me. I was born on the west bank of the Nile, in a village they called the City of the Dead, where every man for generations made his living serving the dead. My father was a weaver of burial linen. All his life he sat at the loom, weaving the finest flax inch by inch into the long cloth that sends the dead on their way. My mother said that on the day I was born a funeral procession passed along the west bank, drums and weeping sounding until nightfall, as if to welcome me. The villagers gave those of us who worked with the dead a wide berth. They said the smell of the other world clung to us and could never be washed off. When I was 6, I first followed my father into the embalming workshop. The heavy reek of natron and resin hit me, and I threw up on the spot. Old Master Embalmer Harry did not laugh at me. He only said that a child who could breathe in that smell and still live was the one fit for this trade. When I was 9, Harry took me on as his apprentice. He said my hands were steady, and so was my heart, that these hands were born to touch this trade. For the first year, he let me touch no body, only learn the 4 canopic jars, and remember which of Horus's 4 sons guarded which organ. He taught me to haul sacks of natron back from the dried salt lake and grind it to fine powder with my own hands, the first thing that keeps a body from rotting. When I was 11, I first touched a dead man's cold hand. I shook so hard I could not even grip the linen strip, and Harry stood by without a word. He taught me to draw the brain out little by little through the nose with a long, thin bronze hook, saying this step tests a man's patience most of all. He taught me to open a small cut in the left flank and take out the organs one by one, leaving only the heart inside, for in the next world it must stand trial. When I was 14, I began to recite the spells from the Book of the Dead. Every line had to be word perfect, for one wrong sound, and the dead could not pass the gate of the afterlife. Harry said we were not craftsmen. We were the hands of Anubis among men, and the moment we put on that jackal mask, we became the god himself. When I was 17, I finished my first embalming alone, an old fisherman of the village whose family saved half a year to afford the fee. For a full 70 days I watched over him, first drying him with natron, then pouring in resin and wrapping him in linen, and at last pressing amulets layer by layer into the bandages. That year people on the West Bank began to ask for me by name. They said my bandages lay the flattest, and in the coffin the body looked as peaceful as if asleep. Harry led me into the innermost room of the workshop and told me that embalming truly came in 3 grades of price, that rich and poor walked 2 entirely different roads. The cheapest only had a fluid poured into the belly and was buried in haste after a few dozen days. Only the rich got the full 70-day rite. When I was 20, I was summoned into the royal workshop, where embalming was done only for priests and nobles, and even the resin was the finest brought from distant lands. When I was 24, I sent off a high priest with my own hands. His coffin used 3 layers of gold, and the amulets alone numbered more than 100 pressed inside. That day, the chief priest of the royal workshop placed the heavy Anubis jackal mask into my hands and bid me preside over every great rite from then on. The moment I put on the mask, the whole room knelt before me. They knelt not to me, but to the door my hands opened to the next world for the dead. When I was 30, word came from the palace that I was to prepare in advance for the aging pharaoh soon to depart, the most solemn 70-day rite of all. I walked deep into the royal tomb to prepare his final rest, and for the first time saw the gold grave goods piled to the ceiling, more than a man could count in a lifetime. In those very years, robbers on the West Bank began digging tunnels by night. After the gold amulets, we pressed layer by layer into the bandages. A noble's tomb I had embalmed with my own hands was emptied. When I rushed there, the coffin lid was pried open, and the body I had watched over for 70 days lay cast in the dust. Kneeling beside that ruined body, I suddenly understood that the flesh I had fought to keep from rotting was, in a robber's eyes, only a layer of cloth in the way. What chilled me more was learning later that some of my own trade had long been in league with the robbers, secretly swapping the real gold amulets for copper while embalming. They pressed fine amulets into the wrappings before the family's eyes. Then once the family left, pried them out one by one under cover of the bandaging. I went to the royal chief priest about it. He only waved his hand and said these waters ran too deep, that I should mind my own hands and not other men's affairs. Only then did I see clearly that this sacred trade of granting men eternal life was, underneath, nothing but a business trading the dead for gold. The year the old pharaoh died, the new king sent most of the men and resin to build his own new tomb, and what was left for me grew worse year by year. I presided over the old pharaoh's last 70-day rite, and on the day I sent him into the tomb, not a soul remembered who had done it all. When I was 50, my hands began to shake. I could not hold the bronze brain hook steady, and for the first time I spoiled a cut before my young apprentices. The newcomers in the royal workshop scorned me for my age. They embalmed by faster methods, and the 70-day rule shrank in their hands to 20 days. I watched them bury nobles after a hasty pour of fluid, knowing in my heart these bodies would not last a few generations and would turn to ash in their coffins. I passed my whole craft little by little to my apprentice Ken, telling him that what was truly worth gold in this trade was not gold, but giving the living a settled heart. I told Ken that what a man fears most in life is not death, but being forgotten after death, and our work was to keep one person from being utterly forgotten. Yet I myself was slowly forgotten. New workshops rose one after another on the West Bank, and no one remembered the masked priest of old. When I was 60, a great illness took me. Lying in bed, I realized that I had sent off people all my life, yet had never prepared a decent burial for myself. A man like me could not afford the full 70-day rite. I knew well that I could only take the cheapest road, a single pour of fluid and a hasty burial. I solemnly placed the Anubis jackal mask that had been with me half my life into my apprentice Ken's hands, for him to wear in my stead from then on. I walked one last time into that familiar workshop. The heavy reek of natron and resin hit me again, and this time I did not throw up. I only smiled. I thought of myself at 6 throwing up at the door, and of Harry's words, that a child who could breathe in that smell and live was the one fit for this trade. On the day I lay down, Ken gathered natron and linen by the rules I had taught him, and secretly gave me the 70-day rite I could never have afforded. He pressed a plain scarab amulet to my chest, inscribed with a single plea, that my heart not speak against me when it was weighed. All my life I sent countless souls toward eternity, and only at the end did I understand that eternity is no more than someone willing to spend 70 days remembering that you once lived. This was the life of an ancient Egyptian embalmer. If you too have quietly held things up for others and gone unremembered, say a word in the comments. Next time, would you rather become the worker who builds the pharaoh's tomb, or the priest who weighs the hearts of the dead? Tell me in the comments.